For the second part of this video, we're going to try this again, but we're going to do it a little bit of a different way. What I'd like you to do is go into your folder and then find a different shark image. So I'm going to take the one from below here, and I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to physically drag it onto our window here. So go to the shark image and drag it right onto the image here into the window. And you'll notice when you do that, you'll have the handles that if you don't hold the shift key down will symmetrically scale. What I'd like to do is have this shark be about the right size for this document, say something like that, and then go ahead and hit the return key to get rid of the handles. Now we know that this is a smart layer, so we want to make sure that this is now rasterized, and the way we do that is control click onto the name, and you'll see one of our options is rasterize layer. So make sure that you do that. You don't want a little smart layer icon here, because otherwise things might not work as you expect. So the next tool we're going to be working on is in the same area, the W for magic wand, which nobody uses anymore. And in this case, probably the object selection tool would work fine, but I want you to use the quick selection tool, which is our next tool. Now the way the quick selection tool works is it acts like a paintbrush to select things. So by default, it's adding, you can see the little plus button, and it's adding to a selection. You can use the bracket keys to increase and decrease the size, just like you can with a paintbrush. And what you do is you just drag over the area that you want to have it selected, and notice that as you get closer here, the paintbrush is too big, so I'm going to use the paintbrush bracket keys here to make it smaller, and you just select the thing you want. Now if you select too much, like if you go outside of the line here, holding the option key down just like before will allow you to unselect things. Of course, if you do that, it gets confused because it's using artificial intelligence. And then for this little area, again, making the paintbrush smaller will allow you to select more and finer detail. Or if you made a mistake here, holding the option key down deselects it. And again, it's using artificial intelligence to select. This works well with the same thing that the smart selection does, in that if there is a nice sharp line, it will select everything perfectly, usually. And again, option key to subtract from the selection. And if you can't get things to work because they're just too fiddly, please go to the Polygon Lasso and use that to capture any detail that's missing. In this case, it's pretty good, and so I'm going to click on my mask layer and watch what happens. In this case, the mask layer actually did what I wanted. Now, if it hadn't, Command I would have inverted that mask layer, but this is actually, doing what I want it to do, which gives me another shark in my tank here. Go ahead and try that with a third shark to see how things are functioning. And I'm going to just go ahead and name this, that's shark 4. I'm just going to call it shark 2, and we're going to continue on. Next thing I would like you to drag into this image is, let's see, let's try this color select clouds. So I'm going to drag these clouds into this image, and you'll notice that they get pretty big, but I'm going to have you zoom out and actually get these clouds to be super big, like much bigger, so that the top and the bottom are actually filled in this image. And then we'll go ahead and hit return. And now we've selected, now we're on this cloud layer. Again, it's a smart object, so control click on the word and then make sure to rasterize this layer. So now it is nothing but pixels, so that when we zoom in, these are actually pixels that we can actually start modifying, and they're not just linked to another image. What I'd like you to do is to take the cloud and take the cloud out of the background. Now I guess we could try to use the object selection tool, but it probably would be fairly confused, but we can give it a try. We can let Photoshop work its AI magic, but you can kind of see that's not quite getting all the clouds. It's not what I want. I want the clouds and not the background. And it should seem pretty straightforward, but the tool that we're going to be using in order to do this, I'm going to deselect, by the way. This is all selected and I don't want this. So the way you deselect is Command D or Select Deselect. So Command D is what I use all the time. I'm going to go back to my move tool, and you can kind of see that's my cloud layer. I'm going to adjust the clouds just so that they're exactly in the position I want. And I'm noticing that the clouds have a lot of grays and whites in them, but the background the sky has these shades of blue. If I could somehow take that shade of blue and make it go away or select that, that is one way I could maybe get these clouds in. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to a new area, select, and we're going to select color range. Now this is a great tool because what it does, offhand you don't see it, but I'm going to click where I knew there was some blue right here. And you'll notice that when I do that, I'm going to click all around here. It actually is selecting all the blue that it sees under my sampling area, plus 40 colors that are nearest to that color. And so in essence, it's sampling that color. Now if I click on the clouds, it'll sample the clouds. You can kind of see that's pretty good. Samples here, and 40 around that. Now I can move this slider up and get more of the selection, and you can see that's the blue that's being selected. Obviously down here is a different color blue, so you can kind of see if I select that, I don't select this. One way to select multiple things, I'm going to bring this back to 40, and I'm going to click here on the blue, and I'm going to hold the shift key down, and shift adds to a select, and I'm just going to keep clicking, and actually I'm going to click, hold, and drag. And now I have all this beautiful blue selected. It's selected because you can kind of see it right here. And if I click once with the shift key held down, it now adds to the selection this blue. And again, I'm going to click, hold, and drag so that more of this blue is selected, right? And now I'm going to dial in the fuzziness until I'm pretty happy with what I see here, which means that the blue was selected and the clouds are not selected. And it looks pretty good. Again, you can make this less or more. The black is not selected, the white is selected. That means everything that's white will be transparent or will be visible, okay? And then we're gonna hit OK when we're happy. And again, I'm gonna just click away. I'm just gonna click once to show you that you can easily mess this up just by clicking here, and all of a sudden everything is gone. So again, holding the shift key down, I'm just dragging here, and then I'm gonna drag up here because I know that's what I want. And I'm gonna move this to about 90 and hit OK. Now it looks kind of weird, but I'm going to hit the mask tool anyway to show you how this looks. Now you can kind of see that I can see through the clouds and the sky is visible and like occluding the sharks. That is the opposite of what I want. So Command I, and now I have the clouds available to use. Now please note as I move this around that when I did this, it didn't actually get anything over here or anywhere over here. So once that's done, you can kind of have to keep it in place. I'm going to undo that because that's the way it's just going to be. Now, if you wanted all the clouds selected, I would have opened the cloud layer as a separate document, right? And then I would have gone ahead and done the select color range in this area, right? And then done the same thing as before, hit OK, and then I would have done double clicking this to make this a layer. Then I would have added a mask and inverted it, and now I have the clouds themselves, and I would have moved this entire layer into this shark layer, just like that. It says some stuff about profiles, I don't care, and now you can kind of see that we do have the ability to now move stuff around. And if needed, I don't want this right here, and it's on my layer mask, so I can select the layer mask, use my Polygon Lasso, and actually just hold the shift key, or just select this area and fill it with the black color. So I'm hitting return to select it, go to my fill color and fill it with the opposite, black, and black makes things invisible, right? So you can always use this mask to actually get rid of things, either using the fill and filling with by a selection, or you can use the brush tool, B for brush, and just, as you can see, I'm using the bracket keys here. You can actually paint away anything you want. So if you have clouds that you don't want on this layer, you can always paint them away. Let me just turn them off so you can see what I'm doing. You can always paint things away like that, right? So a layer mask will give you a lot of options as far as being able to use, and even things that are difficult to select like these clouds would be interesting. So what I'd like you to do is let's go ahead and open up the color select, double click here, and I want the anything that's silhouetted. So what would I use to do that? And you probably guessed it. I will go to color, select color range, and I will click once on the dark area, and then what I will do is not change this fuzziness. I will make the fuzziness lower, and I'm going to shift drag on this area, because what I'm wanting to do is to make sure that the things that I don't want are as white as possible. And if you bring up the fuzziness, you'll notice that these are not white, and that means they won't be removed from the image. So again, you want it to be as black as possible so that you don't have things that you don't want in. So it's better to add to the colors by just clicking in the right location to get that. I'm going to hit OK, double click the background to make it a free layer. I'm going to hit the image mask, and you can see how nice this selection is because it looked for this color range. It's not perfect. This part has some issues. You can kind of see through it. But I'm going to go ahead and take this image and bring it into my other document. And you'll notice when I do it this way that these are not clipping, or these are not smart layers, so you don't have to worry about those things. Now, we have talked a little bit about the free transform tool. So under edit, free transform, but I always use Command T. This will allow you, Command T, to actually modify layers that you're on. So I'm currently on this layer, and notice these two are linked. So I can actually Command T and then actually modify this to my heart's content. Here, return. And then because we need more of this, I'm going to jump this layer, Command J, and notice it duplicated the layer here. And I'm just going to scooch this over so that it looks like we've got something like that. And because I don't want this part in the area, I can just go to my mask, use my brush tool, and instead of brushing with white, I'll brush with black, and you can see that makes those nice and invisible because that layer mask is that layer right there. So here's what we have so far. You can do this obviously for the shark layers too. I'm going to bring the shark layers up in the stack. So I'm going to physically drag the layer up the stack so that we can actually see it in the front. You can kind of see that right here, right? And you could always change the opacity for each layer, so you can make that shark less or more opaque. You can kind of see that. So for the cloud layers, you could also use blend mode. So say we want a screen blend mode, that's how that would look. So things would be super bright. So play with the blend modes as well once you start creating these objects. I'm going to actually take these this layer and move it above the shark so that it's in front of the shark, so the shark is kind of swimming behind it. If you ever need to transform any of these layers, Command T will allow you to transform the shark so that it's smaller or bigger. And here's a nice trick. If you hold the Command key down, this allows you to change or distort an object so that maybe if you took a photo out of perspective, you can always hold that Command key down and grab one of the corners to just change how it's distorted in the image. I'm going to hit escape on this one. Just click here. Okay, and so now we've got my shark layer. Let's go one more extraction tool. Let's go to our selections here, and let's go ahead and open up this girl JPEG. So double click it. For me, opens it in Photoshop, but for you, you probably want to drag it onto the Photoshop icon that's in the dock. Otherwise, I have a feeling double click it will open it in preview. So what tool should we use to extract this girl? I would start with either the quick selection tool or the object selection tool. I'm going to try the object and see how smart Adobe is. Oh, and it perfectly selected for the most part, with the exception of this area here. Some of the hair might be a little bit problematic. I'm going to just go ahead and double click the background and create a layer mask and see what I need to fix. And you can see there's lots of issues here, and I would use my brush tool, B for brush, and then I would be painting away anything that's problematic like this. And we can see that this area needs to be painted away as well. And I would just take my time to paint some of this away. And you can kind of see there's a fairly harsh transition. It feels very, it did a great job, but it's pretty harsh. There's a little piece of like green in her hair and those kinds of things. If you want, this layer right here, it has some options. And if you double click this this layer itself, you get into the properties tab where you can actually change some of the properties for that mask. So for instance, if I want to feather the mask, that makes the mask nice and soft, you can actually feather it just like that, just by adding a little bit of feather. And you can kind of see that it softens the outer edge. It makes it less solid, but it definitely softens it. You can try to smooth, so say you wanted to have a nice smooth selection, you can add some smoothing as well. Currently, we're just showing the onion skin. Let's go ahead and show marching ants, an overlay, and you can kind of see how this layer is kind of working out here. There's even edge detection, so you can actually turn this box on and it's going to look all the way around the edge by however many pixels, maybe 3 pixels here, and try to figure out where the best edge is. So if you have stuff like hair, this is always a good area to refine. If I hit OK, you'll notice that I've softened the areas here. It's not so harsh as it used to be, and it's a little bit smoother. It doesn't make it perfect. I still have to go in and use the lasso tool here probably to you know, add or subtract from this selection. I'm just going to select this area like this. And then once I've got something in my mask here, I can just hit the delete button, and that delete, it's using the background of white. I want the opposite, so I'm going to switch these around, and now I'm going to hit the delete button, and you'll notice that it just deletes what I've selected, because I have the background set to black, and black we know is transparent. So again, you can kind of go in and hit delete and work through all these little elements right here. So if I'm happy with that, I'll move this out of the way and then physically drag this entire layer into my working document. And there we go. And I'll move this little mermaid to the bottom of the stack. There we go. So we can kind of see her in the background. And finally, I'm going to take this blue layer and I'm going to jump it and move it to the top of the stack, right? And now I'm going to use one of my things, and I'm going to use either color, maybe, or one of my blend modes like multiply, and maybe dial that down. And what that's going to do is give everything an overall blue hue cast. You know, it's going to act like a gel. So you can play with some of these things as well. And putting that in between different layers might give you a different look. So for instance, if I put it under the clouds actually pop up, but the girl becomes more blue because this acts like a blue gel. So hopefully select color range you understand now. The different object selections you understand a little bit more as well. And you can use the Polygon Lasso tool to add and subtract to a selection. You can use the marquee tool to grab areas that you want to select or whatever. You can use the marquee tool to remove things easily by selecting the mask and then maybe marqueeing over a certain area on the mask. Notice how these layers are becoming quite complex, which is why naming conventions are so important. So be aware that once you start working in Photoshop, you're going to be using quite a number of layers. And so I'll be showing you how to use folders to arrange these, but just be aware that if you start getting to 20 or 30 layers, naming would be very important. So for your assignment, what I'd love you to do is to create your own 8x8 inch document based off of images that you have found or taken and construct something that looks interesting using the extraction tools that we've talked about. So make it at least 10 layers high. You can use any of the things that you've learned in the previous tutorials. You can work with adjustment layers. You can work with clipping masks. You could work with any of these effects as well. But try to create something that's just interesting to look at and that works with the idea of extraction. What I'd like you to do is get practice using the Polygon Lasso, the object selection, the quick selection, and the select color range. And what I will look for is really, I'm going to look for somewhat perfection. So I'm hoping that you know, areas that look weird or green are fixed. And you can kind of see that this color range selector does have like this fringe outline. So, you know, this is like this window right here. So sometimes it's better to use these layers as, use multiply, and then all of a sudden, boom, that fringe goes away. So if I did the same thing here, multiply, you can see now that's just a better blend mode. Makes things a lot more obviously darker, and so might work better. So work with the blend modes, the opacities, and the different kinds of things to create something that looks interesting. Again, with the clouds, I might dial back the opacity so that it looks like the clouds are layered. And the nice part, is that you can actually work with this until you're happy with what you've got. All right, and then go ahead and turn in a flattened version. And the way you flatten this version, I'm going to save this. Cancel. I'm going to go File, Save, just so I have the Photoshop document with all these layers saved before I do anything bad. And then I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I would like from you a format JPEG, and that will crush all the layers into one single layer, and we can just call it homework or classwork 1, and go ahead and use your own photographs to do this as a JPEG. You'll have another dialog here. You can make it large or 10, doesn't matter, and hit OK. And I'm looking for 2400 pixels by 2400 pixels with lots of layers and lots of interesting things going on. Okay, that's it.